Yeah, that's pretty much
That
accepted science now.
yeah,
Yeah,
that accepted,
exactly.
but
It's a
it,
real
it,
quick
but it's too
synopsis of the
but,
timeline.
right. So what happens? This
Greg's
is what
shaking his head.
happens.
All right, we gotta go to Greg then. Greg's not agree. All right,
I'm
I don't
sitting on
know
my
any
hands.
scientist that doesn't agree, doesn't believe or
Well,
agree
what
in 0 point
happens is
energy.
they
But
don't
okay,
leave it that way. They say that's too hard to calculate, do calculations. So string theory evolved,
okay.
where they make certain assumptions, and now they can start doing calculations. So they don't just leave this messy turbulence as the foundation, which to me is okay. That's where it started with Wheeler, but because you can't do calculations in it and predict self-organizations, there's no linear theory. It's not calculable. It's too complicated. They preferred to simplify and come up with other models, and string theory became the popular model. And brain theory, right on its heels, and there right away, brain theory means parallel universes with these flat flatland membranes, and they use the flatland analogy. That's why they call it a membrane, but they're really meaning parallel universes. And so these ideas are readily kicked around, and now, excuse me, they have something that you at least do calculations with on these models. You can't have things going to infinity like these quantum foam things, and you get your wormholes out of this. Wheeler was the one to calculate it, the wormhole, these channels beyond space, beyond space, are 3 dimensions of space that are going into a higher dimension of space. And so it's an interesting disconnect between laymen and the engineers are in the same camp, that more dimensions can exist, right? Engineers are really stuck in classical physics, right? They can't really get into the complexity of these models.
Well, Greg, you're an
quantum.
engineer. Why didn't you do you agree with him on that?
Yeah, let's hear from you, Greg.
Sorry,
Well,
I have a
again,
question after. I have a question after Craig.
All right, go ahead. But I want to hear
Greg,
Greg's take on this.
Obviously, this isn't about me, and I want to focus on
I know,
your stuff,
I don't. But you shook
but
your head, so you
I have
want
to say that not all physicists agree that the universe is multidimensional, and not all engineers believe it's 3 dimensional. It's not quite that black and white. So that's
Okay.
the first, I would say. And the other thing is, I just want to point out that in this world of independent science, which David Hilster was one, and of course Moray is one as well, there's a huge diversity of opinions. Some people go with mainstream on one thing, and then they are vehemently oppose the mainstream on something else. And so there's as much a variety of opinion in the world of independent science as there is between independent scientists and the mainstream. So that's
Which is why science is great, because you can
Right.
have
right. And
either
the
you
third
prove
point
it
I
or
want
you
to
don't,
make,
or you have theories.
Okay.
I just want to
Go
point
ahead.
out that Moray briefly, I'd like to make a distinction between what 0 point energy is versus how we get it. Now he spent just a little bit of time talking about what 0 point energy is, and I want to re-emphasize that. And that is that if you were to take away all the temperature and all the heat and all the light, and say what's left, what's holding all this stuff together, what is causing matter to be what it is, that I think we all agree that that's what 0 point energy is. There's an energy that's involved that is beyond mere temperature or interaction and mere radiating around and all that kind of stuff. That's what the 0 point energy is. So how we get it, now that's, in my opinion, subject to a lot of debate. And I have a huge amount of respect for I call you Dr. King, and you didn't finish that story, but but anyway, I just want to make that point, that I think they're not that how we get it is still very much up in the air.
All right, just so I'm on the same page with all of you. So scientists and engineers at this point are all in agreement that this thing exists, and some people call it quantum foam, some people call it ether, some people call it 0 point energy. Am I correct that they all agree something there is there? Because they are detecting. I mean, engineers do need to account for it when they're dealing with the small microchips and that. I mean, there is interference at those levels.
They have that in quantum mechanics, but I think where the dispute would be, well, can you get a net energy out?
That's what I'm most interested in.
Yeah,
Right.
and then there's, well, we have conservation of energy, but then you have the uncertainty principle. What's jittering it around? Where did it come from? And I've heard answers like, that's an improper question, right? I go, why?
It's a very good
Improper.
question.
You have
That is the
conservation-
question.
that is the
that's
question,
the question.
because you have a manifestation of energy from nowhere, So just ask the question, where's it come from? That's all
Right.
Wheeler did. He
That's what I wanna
calculated.
know.
He says, well, it comes from a higher dimension.
All right.
Then I have a really
Yeah,
quick
go ahead.
question. Would you say, and this seems out there, with all the latest footage, available from the Pentagon, with all these orbs and imagings of
Just say
alleged UFOs,
How can you
When-
say
and
it's
they-
scientific?
But
we're
would you
not
say-
scientists here.
Oh,
We're
okay.
we're playing a podcasting right now.
So the movement, they say that, well, that's impossible. Is this more interest, stimulate more interest in this? Like, actually, it is. Whatever beings that did this harvest this kind of energy to make it move that way. It's just so far beyond us that we can't even. But there's they have video proof of these weird things doing things that essentially defy logic. Would this explain that? Possibly.
Yeah, of course, because now we have the energy we need to warp space-time. It's like a warp drive that they're doing, warping space-time, and they're just falling with it. That's why they don't feel the inertial stress when they do like a hairpin turn,
yes.
right? Because
They're
it's
not
a
expelling mass. That's why.
it's a warp drive that's going on. So, and the big surprise to say, oh, it's in our future. Well, the biggest surprise, I think, comes out of Steven Greer's work, the latest documentary, the lost century and how to reclaim it. And it was about UFOs, about free energy inventions, and about suppression. And the reason we lost the century because it was suppression. And the big surprise, Greer has no trouble saying, not only are the UFOs there from other intelligences, but we can do it too. It's part of our top secret projects, and we're able to do it. Therefore, it's not that hard to do.
Hey, if you like these kind of conversations and you'd like to see more, click like and subscribe to our channel. And if you're at the computer and you'd like to hear the whole podcast, click right here.